Lies and deceit are often the cornerstone of dramatic tension in movies, with one character's dishonesty, typically the villain's, usually laid bare in the final act. However, sometimes filmmakers love to subtly hint at this deception much earlier on, which you're far more likely to pick up on after watching a few more times. So let's take a look at some more examples. I'm Adam, this is What Culture, and here are 10 more subtle signs movie characters weren't telling the truth. Number 10. The Mandarin talks about fortune cookies, Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 drops its huge, divisive twist at the end of Act 2, that the villainous Mandarin is actually an imposter, an actor called Trevor Slattery who has been used as a smokescreen to allow the real Mandarin to carry out his terrorist acts unimpeded. Now, love or hate the twist, Slattery actually slyly hints to his true nature much earlier in the film, in the first half hour in fact. After the Chinese theatre is blown up, we're shown a video where the Mandarin both takes credit for the attack and offers a seemingly off-topic riff on the nature of fortune cookies of all things. He says, "True story about fortune cookies, they look Chinese, they sound Chinese, but they're actually an American invention, which is why they're hollow, full of lies, and leave a bad taste in the mouth." Though the Mandarin circles back and dismisses the now destroyed Chinese theatre as an American knockoff, his statement about fortune cookies is also entirely indicative of his own deception. This Mandarin is a hollow American-created imitation of the real Chinese one, who, after much time later, we finally meet in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Number 9. Slugworth Is The Devil on the Kid's Shoulders, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When each of the 5 golden tickets is discovered in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the winning children are individually approached by a man purporting to be Mr. Slugworth, one of Willy Wonka's competitors. Slugworth offers each of the children a large cash reward if they can sneak a sample of the everlasting gobstopper out of Willy Wonka's factory, though it's revealed at the end of the film that Slugworth was actually an imposter the whole time. As it turns out, he's Mr. Wilkinson, an employee of Wonka's who presented the deal to the children to test their morality, with only Charlie passing the test. But there's a subtle nod that Wilkinson isn't who he says he is, indicating solely by how his scenes as Slugworth are blocked. Note that he's shown standing on the left-hand side of the other 4 children as he whispers in their ears. Traditionally, a voice whispering from your left shoulder is associated with the devil and a Faustian bargain, that you're being offered a dishonest deal. Tellingly, however, when Wilkinson offers the deal to Charlie, he faces him head-on, rather foreshadowing that he will be the single one not to be seduced by the offer. Number 8. The double-looped O, Coraline. Coraline is one of those wonderful animated films absolutely jam-packed with slight visual details the vast majority of people will never ever notice. Chief among them, when Coraline ventures to the other world and meets the button-eyed doppelganger of her mother, the welcome home cake features a noticeable tell that everything isn't as idyllic as it seems. Namely, the word home has a double loop through the letter O, which handwriting experts typically earmark as an indication that somebody is lying. It's especially noteworthy given that the O in welcome isn't double looped, suggesting that Coraline is most certainly welcome in the other world, but she's not home, because of course she isn't. Though graphology is largely dismissed as junk science in reality, it's nevertheless a neat indication that the other parents aren't being fully forthcoming, and that for as much as they want Coraline there, it isn't where she belongs, and they know it. Number 7. The Joker's eye contact, The Dark Knight. From one sliver of pseudoscience to another now, with the Joker's indicative eye contact in The Dark Knight. You'll surely remember that the Joker tells 2 conflicting stories about how he got his iconic scars, and also attempted to tell a third to Batman at film's end, before the Caped Crusader hastily interrupted him. Yet when the Clown Prince of Crime is telling the first story to Criminal Gamble, that his drunk father cut his face with a knife, note that he looks up to the left several times, as is a commonly believed indicator that somebody is lying, though in reality has no scientific basis at all. But when the Joker tells the second story to Rachel Dawes a little later, that he self-harmed in a deluded attempt to make his scarred wife feel better, he maintains firm eye contact with her throughout, suggesting he's actually telling the truth this time. Now, while in fairness it's entirely possible that the Joker made up both stories for kicks, many fans believe it to imply that his second tale was indeed true. Number 6. Leisureland is Liahland, Downsizing. Another film that categorically proves the cake is a lie now, with Alexander Payne's polarizing social satire Downsizing. The film is centered around a financially struggling man, Paul, who undergoes a shrinking procedure in an attempt to make his money stretch further as a small person. Once he's been downsized, Paul moves to Leisureland, New Mexico, an experimental community exclusive to small people. However, Paul soon discovers that the seemingly idyllic town isn't quite so utopian, especially with the service workers who keep Leisureland running made to live in the slums just outside its walls. But there's a very large clue that Leisureland is being operated as a big, fat capitalist lie. Once Paul decides to be downsized, he's thrown a going-away party complete with a cake. Now look closely, because the cake reads, "Enjoy Leisureland," as in lie. Nope, that's not a typo, but a tricky indication that Leisureland as a concept is built on a foundation of deceit. Now, while I've got you here, I just want to ask you one question that you can leave the answer to in the comments down below. What is one movie twist that really blew your mind? I'll give you one of mine. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, when Joel writes in his diary and the pages are torn out, it really gets you thinking about just how many times Joel and Clementine have been round and round again. Ugh, I love that movie. Alright, now back to the list. Number 5. Hans sings out of sync with Anna, Frozen. Frozen's iconic song Love is an Open Door is a duet performed in the film by Anna and Prince Hans after their first meeting. At face value on first viewing, it's simply a goofy romantic tune in which Anna and Hans begin by singing wildly out of sync with each other, but gradually become simpatico over the course of the track as their love blooms, culminating in Hans proposing to Anna, who accepts. But once we know that Hans is in fact the film's villain who is plotting to kill Anna and Elsa in order to rule Arendelle, it's clear that the song is really an indication of Hans's true nature. That Hans and Anna aren't synced up in the early going makes it clear that Hans is duplicitous and basically just figuring out, through the song, how to tell Anna what she wants to hear. Hence when he says, "That's what I was gonna say," to Anna's iconic sandwiches line, he's absolutely talking a load of bull, but it's totally effective in making Anna believe that they're intensely compatible. You sneaky dog, Hans. Number 4. Mixed Telltale Tree Carving, Crocodile Dundee 2. Now here's something of a more light-hearted example and a blast from the past, with Crocodile Dundee 2. Roughly halfway through the film, Mick brings his lover Sue to his weekender home, at which point Mick insists that she's the only woman he's ever brought there. However, if you look closely at the tree between the pair while they're talking, a romantic carving referring to Mick and an unknown woman named Mary can be seen, complete with a heart and arrowhead drawing. This obviously heavily implies, if not downright confirms, that Mick has brought a lady friend to his weekender sometime before and is lying to Sue, something he's acutely aware of given that he promptly covers the carving with a rag a few seconds later. And yet, the carving is just subtle enough that it's easily missed, and you might just assume that Mick is hanging up a rag for tidiness sake. Number 3. Dr. Nichols' Freudian slip, The Fugitive. In The Fugitive's climax, Dr. Richard Kimball has finally figured out that the man responsible for him being framed for his wife's murder is his colleague, Dr. Charles Nichols. By the time Kimball shows up at a hotel conference to confront Nichols, though, it's very clear that Nichols has been lying the entire time. Yet there's also a more sly indication of his duplicity while he's delivering his speech about contentious new drug Provasic. A second or two before Nichols notices Kimball arriving at the hotel, he briefly trips over his words. He intends to say the model for a continued honest open joint venture, but he accidentally says dishonest before quickly correcting himself. Despite clearly being a master manipulator, Nichols fleetingly showed his true self on stage, outing himself as a liar, even if he managed to briefly smooth it over with the conference's attendees as a mere slip of the tongue. But as we and Kimball know, of course, his mind was betraying him. Number 2. Mother Gothel looks at Rapunzel's hair, tangled. While the film is entirely upfront about Mother Gothel being a villain from the very beginning, Rapunzel herself doesn't realize that, though there is one brilliantly snide indication throughout the whole movie. Note that basically anytime Gothel is affectionate towards Rapunzel, she looks not at her eyes or face, but her hair. Most notably, after Gothel performs the song Mother Knows Best, she tells Rapunzel, "I love you most," but as she says it, she moves Rapunzel's head downwards and kisses her head, or more accurately, her magical locks, which keep Gothel youthful. Rapunzel, of course, thinks her mother is talking to and kissing her, but not quite. She's referring to the gorgeous locks flowing from her head, the removal of which ends up being Gothel's satisfying downfall at film's end. Number 1. Leonard as Sammy, Memento. Christopher Nolan's superb Memento is a unique example here, because the character in question isn't lying to other people, but in fact himself. Early in the film, amnesiac protagonist Leonard recounts the story of Sammy Jankus, a fellow amnesiac who accidentally administered an insulin overdose to his wife due to having no memory of giving her a shot. Leonard returns to the Sammy story throughout the film, and deep into the third act, we cut back to Sammy once again. Yet in the final shot of the flashback, Sammy is replaced by Leonard for maybe a half second before the scene abruptly cuts away. Now, this visual is certainly noticeable on a first viewing, unless you blink at the wrong time or are watching while on your phone, and please don't be that person, not with this movie, though the significance of it isn't immediately apparent. It's subsequently revealed that Sammy Jankus' story is actually Leonard's own, that he accidentally killed his wife with insulin injections while suffering from amnesia, and he repressed this memory, in turn constructing a murder mystery narrative for himself to solve in order to escape his guilt. At first, you might assume the fleeting visual of Leonard as Sammy is nothing more than a flourish nodding towards the film's generally tricky cerebral nature, but it's straight up telling you that Leonard isn't being honest with himself or the audience.